Week 2, still no intro. I don't think there's ever going to be an intro. So let's get right to the fucking show. This is Let's Talk Premier League. I'll be your host, Steven Radojicic, and in this podcast, we will be breaking down this week's fixtures in the Premier League in 2 minutes or less. And then at the end, I'll do a little bit of fantasy analysis or whatever you want to call it. Did it last week and it worked pretty well. So let's get to it. First match of the week was a Friday match with Aston Villa versus Manchester United. Let's get the time going. So as I said, this was a Friday match, going to be one of the only Friday matches of the year. Scoreline finished Aston Villa 0, Manchester United 1. Not an extremely convincing performance from Manchester United, but Adnan Wanizai's goal was fantastic. He did a little Cruyff move down the left side, pulled back, whipped it in with the right foot. Very good goal. Mata had a beautiful feed to him. Other than that, not too much happened. Schneiderlin had a good attempt at goal. Cross coming in, went for a header, but unsuccessful. Memphis was not very convincing this game at all. His shots were all over the damn place if you watched it. But as I mentioned this, Manchester United did just have another game where Memphis played rather well. It wasn't a Premier League fixture, so it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with fantasy. But since he's performing outside of the league, you can kind of assume that maybe he's finding his form. So Memphis might be a good guy to look at, might not. He struggled in this game. As for Aston Villa, not much. Couple yellow cards, no clear-cut opportunities, I would say. Guzan did fairly decent in goal, holding Man U to 1, but nothing ridiculous. So that's that game. Cutting that early because not too much to talk about there. All right, let's move on to the next game, which was Southampton versus Everton. Still rocking my little Everton logo here. Too lazy to print out a new one. And let's begin. So this was a dominating performance from Everton. Scoreline finished Everton 3, Southampton 0. 2 goals from Lukaku, a goal from Barkley. Barkley also got an assist from Coleman, and an assist from Kone. What do you know? Fucking Kone. I told everyone not to get him, and he got an assist. So the first goal was a Lukaku goal coming off of a counterattack. Southampton had a corner. They weren't able to execute the corner very well at all, and it was just lazy getting back from Southampton. That's the only way to describe it. Everton bursted forward. Kone found some space, gave a nice little cross to Lukaku, who managed to head it in. That was the first goal. Another goal from Lukaku was very nice. Good through ball from, I believe it was Barkley, not Coleman. I think this was Barkley's pass to Lukaku through the back line, and Lukaku brought it on home for his second, and then another goal from Barkley at the end. Tim Howard did well in goal, got a couple big saves. Overall, just dominating from Everton. Southampton failed to do too much creation, lots of yellow cards on defense, not too much going on offensively. Just, yeah, good performance from Everton. In terms of fantasy, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Everton players because they have quite a difficult schedule coming up. With that being said, though, Lukaku is back in form, so he might produce against the big guys. I know they've got, I want to say, Chelsea, Arsenal, a lot of the big name teams coming up, but hey, Lukaku might be a good nod given how shitty everyone else has been doing. So, might want to look at him, might not want to look at him. Again, Barkley did well, so that's all I got to say for that game. Moving along, we have Spurs versus Stoke. All right. Spurs-Stoke. So Spurs actually started this game off fantastically, got 2 goals in the first half. Dyer and Chadley scored those goals. Chadley's was a nice header far post. Lloris did well in goal for the Spurs. Overall, first half, I thought Spurs were fantastic, played excellently. Can't really complain with their performance there. But come second half, Spurs started to kind of slack a little bit. Stoke got their shit together, and they came out to play. So Stoke's first goal was the result of a foul inside the box by a Spurs player. It was a very nice little move from, I believe it was Joselu to win the PK. He kind of took it down the left side, right inside the box, a little Cruyff move to pull back, and the guy just hacked him. There was no doubt about it. Clear-cut penalty. Arnautovic ended up striking that on in for Stoke to make it 2-1, and that was the penalty. Doof also got a goal, number 2. Good goal. I mean, not much to say about it, but it was the equalizer, so obviously that kind of that gave Stoke the momentum, and then they almost came back and won the game 3-2 towards the end. Had a couple more like opportunities at the end, but that's kind of that in terms of that game. Maybe look at Due from a fantasy standpoint. I was impressed with Hosselu's performance, but I don't know if he's a good fantasy nod. Both keepers made a lot of saves, so but I mean again it was 2-2, so you want clean sheets. So I think that's about it for that game. Moving along, we have Sunderland versus Norwich. All right, so this game was fairly surprising for me, actually. I think I'm in a prediction league for the Premier League, and I'm pretty sure I called this game at like 0-0, maybe 1-0. I thought it would be low scoring. Both defenses can kind of keep it together. But no, this game actually finished Norwich 3, Sunderland 1. So Norwich actually played some fantastic football in this game. I was very impressed with their ball possession and their movement. Sunderland just wasn't strong defensively, as they sometimes are. I mean, again, like they're not a bad defensive team. Like last season, they did fairly well. They were generally able to keep some clean sheets. This game, we definitely did not see that. Good goals from Whitaker, Martin, and Redmond, and 2 assists from Houlihan. He was very involved in the creation. He might be a good nod. I'm sure he's really cheap. I think if I remember right, he's around 5'5". From the Sunderland side, can't really recommend anyone. Watmore with a goal. I want to say that was at the very end of the game. Didn't catch this one live, but I saw some highlights, so doing my best to relay the information I picked up from the highlights. But actually, yeah, now that I think of it, I do remember the Sunderland goal. It was their debut player, so Watmore. This was his first start. Norwich went up 3-0. It was game over, but a little consolidation with Watmore's goal. I'm sure it's going to be a day he'll remember, but at the end of the day, it's the day that they want to forget. So they'll move into next week hoping to improve upon this week's performance. That should cover that game. All right. Doing well so far. Next game of the week was Swansea versus Newcastle. And we begin. So, if you didn't catch this game, scoreline finished Swansea 2, Newcastle 0. Swansea's been really impressing me this season so far. They tied Chelsea last week. This win against Newcastle now, I think they have the potential to finish definitely top 10, and I could even see them challenging for a spot in Europe maybe with their new signings. Ayew, he's been really involved. Got a goal for them this weekend. The first goal was a goal actually by Gomes. Very calm and collected, kind of broke away from the defense. 1v1 against the goalie. Did a little skill move to get past him and slotted it home. Just nice finesse shot. Nothing crazy. The one thing worth noting was Newcastle. Jan Maat got 2 yellow cards. Really stupid fouls. Should not have been, well, I mean, absolutely should have been sent off given the fouls, but it was just stupid play, like awful. Like he did not need to make the fouls he was making. So he went off actually in the first half, so that made this an uphill battle for Newcastle, absolutely. They had to play the whole second half with only 10 men. Krul overall did pretty well in goal. I want to say he got 4 to 5 saves, somewhere in that range. So he might be a good nod, but right now, Newcastle struggled this game for sure. Lots of posts and crossbars also being hit for Swansea. I know Montero knocked one in off the post. I want to say Sigurdsson knocked one off the post or the crossbar. Yeah, so overall. And then the last goal was a Montero assist to Ayew, who headed it on home. So that's a wrap on the Swansea Newcastle game. That should be it. All right. Moving forward, we have by far the most exciting game of the week, Watford West Brom. I say that completely jokingly because it was a 0-0 game, and yeah, it was shit. Both teams did not do anything. Pretty embarrassing overall. Watford created a little bit. I mean, okay, maybe saying it was complete shit is a little bit not fair to them. Jurado had a good free kick, whipped wide, so didn't end up challenging the keeper. Igalo had a good crack, forced the keeper into a save. Towards the back end of the game, somewhere in like 70th minute to the 80th minute, Berahino had a good shot. He just didn't direct the header properly. I mean, it was literally 2 to 3 yards off the line, like no excuse to not hit the target from there. I mean, at least challenge the keeper, but nope, he sent that one wide. I'm pretty sure when it was all said and done, West Brom had 0 shots on target, so that's never good. My Hill made some good saves for West Brom. Just kind of looking at some stats right now. Again, I watched highlights. So again, since nothing happened, My Hill got the bonus. So I mean, he might be a good nod. West Brom hasn't been the most solid defensively, but if he's cheap, maybe. Not much to talk about from this game. No one really impressed me. I still like the Dini Agallo combo up top if they play, so they might be good looks for fantasy. I think Agallo was 5.0, Dini's 5.5, but this game, not much to report. Just, yeah, slow game, 0-0 games, as they often are. All right, that's a wrap on Watford West Brom. Next game we have is West Ham Leicester. Leicester has been very impressive so far this week. I gave them a lot of praise last week. I think I said this week before. Okay, sorry. We're just gonna continue. Mahrez, another goal. I said last week if there's one knee-jerk pick for fantasy, Mahrez is probably the best option, and he proved that. He got a shit ton of points again this week, so I would imagine he's the top out of all the point scorers in fantasy. So he's a good look. Leicester has a lot of good fixtures coming up too. So I mean, if it means anything, I picked him up because I figured it was a good call. I used my wild card, but I'll get onto that later. Oh, Brighton did well again as well. He got himself an assist, so I mean he's been involved in the attacks. Okazaki scored the first goal for Leicester. He ripped the shot in, got saved, but the save kind of pushed it up. So Okazaki followed his shot as you should do as a striker, and he managed to hit it on home. So I respect that a lot. The fact that he didn't give up on the play just because like it looked like there might have been a save. Mahrez scored on the assist from Albrighton. What else to report? So Schmeichel which is the Leicester keeper, had a challenge on Sacco that, in my opinion, should have been a clear red penalty. He basically clotheslined Sacco as he was running onto the ball, but I don't know. The ref didn't see anything, so he didn't call it. I think it should have been a red, but he got away with one there. He got away with one. Payet had a good crack to score. Good goal from him. Payet's been impressing me a lot for West Ham. If you're going to look at any West Ham player, I like Payet. Adrian had a good game in terms of saves. I think he got 4. But at the very end, West Ham was desperate, so they sent up the keeper for a corner, as you do in like the 91st, 92nd minute. And he got a red card for karate kicking a guy in the chest. So that was kind of ridiculous. I kind of a little funny train of like keepers there because Courtois got the red last week. Timer's out, but I do have more to talk about for this game, so I'm gonna say fuck it and keep going. So Courtois got the red card last week. If you remember from last week, I recommended, hey, like look at Adrian. He played well the first week against Arsenal, and he gets a red card. So there were quite a few managers that had to deal with that shit. So yeah, and then Adrian's actually gonna be out for 3 weeks. They tried to overturn it, and they were unsuccessful. So if you have him, get rid of him now. Like he's got to go. Don't keep a keeper for on a 3-week suspension. So I had to go a little bit over 2 minutes there just to get that last part in because that's like number 1 tip right there. If you have Adrian, get rid of him. I got rid of him as part of my wild card. So moving along to the next game, we have Crystal Palace. Shit, and we have Arsenal. That was an embarrassing little job I did there. I'm struggling. This is a very suboptimal podcast. If you watch Men in Blazers, I think this is more suboptimal. So, let's get to it. All right. Crystal Palace Arsenal finished Arsenal 2, Crystal Palace 1. Honestly, both teams played fairly well. It was a much better Arsenal this week, which I was thrilled about. If you can't tell, I am an Arsenal fan. So, very nice work from Arsenal. Big improvement over their last week versus West Ham. Beautiful goal from Giroud. Oh, this was a nice one. We got kind of lucky that the attack didn't fall apart because it was some decent defending, but we got a lucky deflection, and it went off to Ozil on the left side. Ozil whipped it across to Giroud from the left foot, and Giroud did like a half bicycle kick. He kind of had to lean back into it, reposition his body, and nailed it into the far post, into the far corner. So it went in, and it was nice. That's like a goal contender for goal of the week, I would say. Sanchez also played rather well. He got himself an assist, but it ended up being an own goal off of the Crystal Palace player Delaney because it took a bizarre deflection and went in. The Crystal Palace goal was from I want to say right back, Ward. It was a very nice goal. Just kind of, he kept it nice and low, cruised across the ground, pass check into the bottom left corner. I mean, very, very clinical finish. I was impressed with that. For a defender, generally you don't see those kind of like nice, clean shots. A lot of the time it's just a bizarre rip and sometimes it goes in. But yeah, so overall, I was impressed with both teams' performance. Anything else to report? Wickham hit the post for Palace, so it could have actually given them a lead before the Arsenal second goal. They could have gone up 2-1. But again, post, it happens. Post and crossbar. Lots of post and crossbar this week. So, I think that's all I have to say off of this game. I was a happy camper. Arsenal got the 3 points, so that's a wrap on that. Moving along, we had probably the most anticipated game of the week. Not jokingly, like how I was for Watford and West Brom. We had Manchester City versus Chelsea. So I did see this one live, and boy, was this a shocker. I think everyone kind of expected this to be low scoring. Both teams were going to kind of sit back, try to play the defensive road, as Chelsea often does, right? Park the bus. So the game, if you didn't catch it, actually ended up finishing Man City 3, Chelsea 0. It sort of blew them out. The pace of the game was definitely set early. Right from the kickoff, about 30 seconds in, Aguero found himself on a breakaway. Begovic made a fantastic save for Chelsea. So, honestly, Begovic had a great performance. Like, he was all over the place, stopping Aguero early on. Aguero could have easily had 4 or 5 goals. So, based on that, I'm going to tell you right now, get Aguero into your fantasy team. I mean, again, he could have had a hat trick this game, like no doubt. If Begovic wasn't on point, if it was a weaker keeper, Aguero would have rallied up the points. Other than that, again, dominating performance for Man City, just like last week against West Brom. Company got himself another goal. Fernandinho with a goal. Silva was playing as a good provider. Yet again, Sterling didn't really do much. So I dropped him for the wild card. Anything else to report? Let's see. Controversial offsides. Ramirez was called for an offsides goal for Chelsea. Other than that, yeah, Man City had their 2 goals late. So, I mean, Chelsea stayed in it. Like, it's not like it was completely blown out. Like, first half, Man City was only up 1-0. It wasn't anything crazy, but Chelsea was never able to fight their way back. And that's it for that game. So, that was an exciting one, though. That was the big hype. So, final game of the week was the Monday game. Liverpool, Bournemouth. All right. So you got a feel for Bournemouth. Another 1-0 loss. Liverpool squeezed by them. Bournemouth's been playing well, all things considered, for a promoted side. Like, I almost feel bad because they're on 0 points, but their hearts are there. They're playing. They're creating. They're doing pretty well. Richie's doing well for them. Things to report. There was an early goal for Bournemouth that was disallowed due to a little push in the back or like a grab, whatever you want to consider it. So that was disallowed. And then the Liverpool goal was just as controversial, if not more. It was a Benteke goal off of a cross. So I'm going to try to paint a picture here. So Coutinho was offsides, but the rest of the team was onside, right? So as the cross whipped in, Coutinho did make an attempt to play the ball. He didn't make contact or anything, but I think he was involved enough that the keeper wasn't sure whether he should defend against Coutinho's kick or whether he should go to the back post to cover where Benteke made his run. So Coutinho got himself involved but didn't touch it. Ball went by Coutinho to Benteke, and he had a very easy finish because the keeper was still covering Coutinho. So, like last year's rules, that would be a clear goal because Coutinho didn't get a touch on it. He didn't do enough. But they rewrote the rules this year that should have technically been offsides because he like confused the keeper enough that like he didn't know that the keeper didn't know who to cover, Boric. So controversial, but I mean, is what it is. Liverpool got themselves a goal. I do think Liverpool outplayed Bournemouth at the end of the day. So I mean, even if they didn't get that goal, Liverpool could have scored elsewhere. Benteke should have made it 2 at the end. He hit the crossbar, which would have been awesome for me because I had him captain on my fantasy team. But you know what? You win some, you lose some. I'm just glad he got the 1 goal. Richie also hit the bar for Bournemouth, and oh, at the very end, I have like 5 seconds left. So at the very end of the game, there was a very comedic free kick routine from Liverpool that made me laugh a lot. It was like a roll off, and then Milner just drilled it out into the fucking stands, and it was really funny. If you haven't seen it, I'll either link it. I'll either link it in the down below, or just go look it up. Just I don't know. I shared it on Twitter, so I'm sure you can find it somewhere. Just look up comedic Liverpool free kick or something. I don't know. So that is a wrap on this week's Premier League fixtures. We covered all 10. So at this point in time, I'm now gonna move along to some fantasy analysis. So I'm gonna tell you kind of what players are worth looking at, what kind of tactics you might want to consider. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I did go ahead and use my wild card this week because it's been just a weird fucking 2 weeks for most, I would say, like veteran fantasy players. I've been at this for 9 years. Like I wouldn't say I'm like a great fantasy player or anything, but I do kind of get the structure. It's like I know like when to pick up players, when like value changes happen, and that kind of stuff. Again, like it's not like I've ever finished top like 10,000 or 100,000 or anything. Like I'm not great, but I get how it works. So I'm a somewhat reliable person to listen to. I mean, take what I say with a grain of salt, but people to look at. Let's see. So Lukaku's at the top now. I still have a hard time recommending him because of his difficult fixtures. Like I'm just gonna look really quick. He's got Man City, Spurs, and Chelsea next 3 games. That's the Everton. So I can't really recommend him. Aguero isn't at the top, but Aguero is a fantastic pickup. Expensive as shit. He's already at 13.1 now because everyone's been bringing him in. His price probably would have risen even more, but I'm sure a lot of people are wildcarding, and if you didn't know, that does not affect price changes, so that's something important to keep in mind. So yeah, I would get Aguero. I like Southampton's future fixtures, like Pele, Mane. Pele hasn't done much yet, but their next games are Watford, Norwich, and West Brom, so I could totally see them racking in some goals. Um, Other than that, the budget strikers are still hard to decide who's worth getting. Uh, Kone for Everton. I said no last week. I think I'm going to stick to my gut and continue to say no. He did go up in price though, but again, Everton has crazy fixtures. So if you're going to get someone from Everton, I would look at Lukaku personally. Gomes has been impressing for Swansea a lot. He might be a good grab. I'm trying to find like a diamond in the rough to recommend in terms of forwards. But to be honest, I don't really have much. I grabbed Igbonmahor just as a budget guy because he plays 90 minutes and he's at 5-0 and they don't have the hardest fixtures coming up. So I guess if you need a budget guy, Igbonmahor is not bad. Igalo Dini, as I mentioned earlier, also decent snags. Let's move on to the midfield because I feel like there's a lot more to talk about in the midfield. So not earlier, last week I mentioned probably having an Arsenal midfielder is a good idea. This weekend, I would say if it's not Sanchez, it might not be worth it. Ozil performed pretty well, but I think at this point, like if you're gonna grab an Arsenal midfielder, it's time to grab Sanchez. It's pretty clear he's the center of all the attacks, and he should be racking up some points. Leicester, like last week, so I said he was a decent knee-jerk pick. He performed again, and their fixtures are good. So honestly, at this point, I would get a Leicester guy in your squad if you're gonna wild card or if you can afford it. And when I say afford, I mean they're cheap as shit. So I would downgrade a budget or like a name brand player to get one if you can. Let's see who else. Who else looks good? Ayew from Swansea looks like a good pickup. He's at 7-1 now. His value went up. He's been playing really well for Swansea. He scored 10 points first week, 7 points second week. So he might be a good nod. Last week I mentioned Stoke getting the new pickup Shaqiri. He is in. He was originally supposed to play this last week, but there were some complications. But he is, I would say, almost a definite go for this upcoming game week. So Shaqiri might be a good look. That's kind of my that's my diamond in the rough. I'll go ahead and say it, Shaqiri, because what's his ownership? His ownership is at 1.2%. So not many people will have him, and they're playing Norwich. So if you want a cool 7-0 guy, he might be good to look at. Yaya Toure did pretty well again. Silva for Man City. Get some Man City coverage if you can. Chelsea's been playing like ass, but they might bring it back. So personally, I dropped Hazard. I'm having a hard time with his price tag, him justifying it. But at the end of the day, if you think Hazard will come back and do well, keep him or get him. But I thought it was time to get rid of him and put that money elsewhere. In terms of defenders, company, he's up to 6-2 now because everyone's bringing him in. He got 14 points the first week, 11 points the second week. If you had him from the beginning, wow, that's huge. If you didn't have him from the beginning, it might be time to pick him up, but he is at 6-2 now, so I don't know, maybe. Chelsea defenders, I still like the Chelsea coverage, even though they haven't been playing particularly well. I feel like it's just like a little slump. Like they've got to get it back together soon, right? And they have West Brom, Crystal Palace, Everton as their next 3 games. So hopefully maybe 2 out of 3 clean sheets there. So Chelsea coverage, Ivanovic. Something important that I actually did forget to mention during the opening 20 minutes of the show. John Terry got pulled out at halftime, which is interesting because center backs do not get pulled out under just about any circumstance. So that's interesting to note. That might mean that I I don't really know what it means, but that Chelsea back line might not be as solid without him because he's been a core part of their back line in the past. So who knows? Maybe Ivanovic will shift to the middle as Piliqueta. Hard to say for sure. Manchester United, Smalling looks good. Darmian might be a good idea to get some Man U coverage in there. Darmian's up to 5-7 now though, so you'd have to start taking some points hits if you want these guys. Uh, Liverpool also pretty good. Klein did well, Lovren, Skirtle, but I'm not exactly sure who's nailed on. In terms of some budget guys, Tarjay for Southampton is still playing, but he's going to get replaced soon, so you might want to look elsewhere from him. Honestly, there's no real 4-0 options who are playing right now, other than Tarjay, but he's going to be out. Stephen Taylor played for Newcastle for a couple of minutes, but nothing crazy. Let's look at some goalkeepers for a little bit. I told you guys not to get Romero for Man U. I was mistaken. My bad. Lots more drama on the De Gea front. Who knows what's going on there? So Romero's got ownership of around 10% now. He got himself a clean sheet last week. So I mean, if he's the starting Man U keeper, maybe get him. If not, I still can't recommend him just because I don't know what the fuck is going on with De Gea. So think about it, I guess. Mignolet did well for Liverpool. They play their next games are Arsenal, West Ham, and Man U though. So I'm trying to steer clear of Liverpool players for now. But again, up to you. Adrian got the 3-game suspension. I honestly don't want to recommend a goalkeeper because I feel like if I do, I'll get a red card, right? We had Courtois, we had Adrian. Who's next? I'm just going to take a random guess. We're going with Guzan. Guzan's getting the red card this week. You heard it here first. In all seriousness, though, I don't know. Look at anyone, really. There's a 4-0 guy who's playing for Crystal Palace, McCarthy. He might be a good budget option if you want. All the pricey guys aren't doing too much better than the less pricey guys. So up to you. I'm saving money in my keeper front. I'm spending a total of 8.5 now at post wildcard. So just something to keep in mind. You might not want to throw all your money into goalkeepers right now because they're not super consistent. I'm gonna go ahead and change my format here, and I'm gonna go with team selected by, just so that I can kind of tell you guys who everyone's got, so that we can talk about maybe some potential price changes and the likes. So in goal, tons of people still have Czech. I guess he's a good nod. Courtois, okay, I'm looking at Courtois right now, and he actually went down to 5.4. So if you want to build some team value, Courtois might be a good grab because, I mean, I would assume he's going to go back to starting for Chelsea. Given Begovic played decently, so maybe I can't recommend Courtois, but I don't know. He's got 16.7 team ownership, and he's a good keeper, so he might be worth looking at. Let's look at some defenders. Who does everyone have now? Tons of people still have Klein for Liverpool. Company's ownership went up a shit ton since he had 2 fantastic games. So if he performs again next week, that price is going to continue to rise. So if he doesn't, though, then obviously it won't. So your call as to whether you want to hop on it. I did, if that means anything. Darmian's price has been going up a lot. Let's see. A lot of people still have Fonte from Southampton, but Southampton hasn't been great defensively. So I would look elsewhere than Southampton defenders. Midfielders, tons of people still have Hazard. I dropped him, but I'm sure he'll figure his shit out. Depay, he was supposed to have a price drop, but based on his good performance today, not in the Premier League. I'm pretty sure a lot of people kind of snagged him in before that like adjustment would have happened. I was keeping up with like some analytics on how the price changes work, and he was almost at the point of like where the algorithm would have sent him over, but instead I think a lot more people brought him in, and he moved away from that limit. So he's at 21.4% ownership right now. Coutinho, a lot of people like some Liverpool midfielders. I know, what's his name? Alexis Sanchez's ownership is going up. A lot of people are trying to bring him in now since he will be starting, you would think. Yaya Toure's ownership continues to rise. Shaqiri's is still low, so I like it. If he performs this week, I'm telling you, and I think he will. Uh, he's a good nod. Let's see, moving along to forwards. I'm sure we're going to see Aguero towards the top now. Yep, okay, Aguero's in the number 4 slot. Benteke still at the top because he was one of the only, like, I guess, name brand forwards to perform this week. Rooney struggled again, so I know a lot of people are dropping him, using their wild card to then get Aguero. Same thing with Kane. That's what I did. Uh, I'm sure Rooney and Kane will come to sooner or later, but I don't know. Until it happens, it might not be worth holding them. Uh, and I'm just gonna hit on Rooney really fast. Lots of rumors around Man U picking up Pedro from Barcelona, a big name player. So if Pedro can start feeding to Rooney and Rooney can go back to like a number 10 slot rather than like the sole striker, that might be a good. He might be a good look. Like I think he'll start scoring once he starts getting services from Pedro. So any hidden ones? Yep. Gomes at 9.6, team selected by. He might be a good look. Lukaku's ownership is going up. Other than that, I think that about covers what I wanted to talk to you guys about this week. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Premier League. I enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Thanks for stopping by, and I will see you again next week. Whoa. That's how I'm going to end it from now on. Every week. It's going to be whoa.